Welcome back. I think if you keep your ears open and you're out in public, it's not going to take you very long to come across a situation where you hear people talking about immigrants and not talking about them in a very positive way. And I can appreciate the fact that the Liberal government, the past, not the current one, but the Trudeau government, obviously made a mistake in its immigration policy by allowing more immigrants to come into the country than we had the physical capacity to house them, much less our own population. Yes, the Liberals will take an awful lot of criticism for it, but so too will the immigrants that are affected, who through no fault of their own, they came to Canada on the promise of a better life. They were recruited in most cases to come here. Many of them are skilled people. What I'm here to talk about today is the migrant workers that work in the agricultural sector, the food services sector, the food delivery sector, the transportation sector. If you're looking for a common denominator in all of this, then I think the word food is probably that common denominator. It is the thing that seems to wind its way through all of those scenarios. But in particular, I wanted to talk very quickly about people who work in the agricultural sector, meaning farm workers. And agricultural work, the work in the fields, is one of those areas where the existing Canadian population, for whatever reason, just will not go there. So whether it's because of the wages, or whether it's because of the hours, or whether it's because of the type of work, or whether the work is viewed as being demeaning or what have you, but we have a shortage in this area, and of course this is an important area. Well, the others are as well, but I mean, we're talking about cultivation and harvesting of food, and all of us need food. So I would say that this is an essential sector. So Canada has seasonal workers that come into the country. They arrive here on what are called closed work permits, which means that they're only allowed to work for the entity, the farm, the agricultural concern that arranged to have them brought into the country in the first place. These farms and these agricultural entities, I would imagine, have been part of some sort of recruitment effort to identify and find people. These people are mostly coming from the Caribbean, although there are exceptions to that. If you go south of the border, you're going to find that most of their workforce, their agricultural sector workforce, is Hispanic. But ours tends to come mostly from the Caribbean. So you're looking at the Dominican Republic, you're looking at Haiti. In particular, you're looking at Jamaica. And so here in Renfrew, we've got farms in the surrounding area, and they hire seasonal people to come in too. And so periodically you see these workers, walking down the main drag of Renfrew, and it's 35 degrees Celsius, and they're all wearing tracksuits and long sleeves and hats and all this kind of stuff. And you're going, oh my God, how can you possibly, what's wrong with you? It's hot outside. Except that these people work outside all day long, and I think they have an understanding of what hot feels like. Their climate where they're from is hot. And when they come up here in the summer, of course, it's hot, and you're working in the field all day. So what are you supposed to do? Go out there with next to nothing on and get burned? So, I mean, they have a common sense approach where they dress and they cover themselves so as not to expose themselves needlessly to the sun's rays. And not only that, but when you're wearing long pants and long sleeve shirts and that sort of thing, I would imagine it kind of cuts down on the nuisance factor for things like mosquitoes and black flies and anything else that's buzzing around out there in the farmlands of this great nation. But this is not a feel-good story. I mean, this seasonal work is important, and so these workers are important to have them come up here and do this. But more often than not, the conditions in which these workers do their thing are horrible. They're exploited. They're treated like essentially slaves. And so what some of these unsavory agricultural entities will do, they will bring up these migrant workers to work the fields. They'll house them. Now there's an industry standard, but they'll house them in circumstances that are third world, okay? And so you're looking at 16 to 20 men living in a garage. Inside that garage, they have their cooking area, they have their washroom slash bathroom, their personal hygiene area, their common area, that sort of thing. All of this stuff is pretty much lumped into a single room inside of a garage. Now, I'm not saying this happens in every single case. This is a worst case scenario, of course. Some farmers treat their migrant workers excellently and put them in not substandard housing, but standard housing, and good on them. But there are some unsavory characters in this field, as there are in all other fields. So some of that unsavory factor shows its head in terms of housing the workers in substandard housing, in conditions that are third world conditions that are probably worse than the conditions that they're coming from, whether that's from Haiti or Jamaica or the Dominican Republic or where have you down in the Caribbean. These people are coming up here not because they looked at a travel brochure and they thought, hey, you know what, we can come here, we can visit the Bone Share Caves, get a little work in, that's not why they're here. They're here to earn money, to send that money back home, to make life better for their family back home. And so they're willing to come up here and endure these indignities that are foisted upon them. And the rest of us, to be fair to the rest of us, unless you go looking for this kind of thing, or unless you pay close attention to the news rather, you probably wouldn't even know that such a thing would be happening here in Canada. But it is. And so, it's not just the substandard housing. The employers will hold back their wages. They will not pay them very much to begin with. And so what they do pay them, they'll either hold back the entire wage and give it to them in a lump sum at the end of the season, or they will hold back some just to make sure that the employee is, or the migrant worker rather, is behaving themselves. And how do we define that? I guess that's sort of left up to the employer to define what behaving oneself means. These people can be physically abused. They can be sexually abused, particularly if they are female migrant workers. And more often than not, and this seems to be a standard practice, is as soon as they come up here, the employer will seize their documentation. They'll seize all their documents, and like things like passports and travel documents and employment documents and all of that kind of stuff. They'll take them and they'll hold on to them. And this is sort of like their way of making sure that these guys don't cut and run. We went through all the effort of recruitment, of identification, recruitment, and bringing them up here and working in our farm. The last thing we want to do is go to all that effort and then have this guy take off and go work for somebody else to go find a better deal. We don't want that. We're not interested in better deals. We're interested in making sure that these guys show up and work their 14 to 15-hour days, 7 days a week. They do this for peanuts, and then for the peanuts that we do give them, and I'm talking about the scarce amount of money that we pay them, we'll hold some of that back. And in the bargain, we'll treat them with disrespect. We'll physically threaten them. We'll threaten to have them deported, or threaten all sorts of things. This is a vulnerable population, and so they are very susceptible to any kind of threat, whether that threat has any basis in reality or not. So, this is a bit of a tragedy that's happening here. And part of the problem is these government-issued closed work permits. And by virtue of the name closed, you can understand that these are sort of like one-way tickets. In other words, if you're going to come up here and work in Canada as a seasonal agricultural worker, then we want to make sure that you stick with the person that made the effort to bring you up here in the first place. And so, therefore, that's why we have the closed work permit. But that's part of the problem. And that closed work permit is what keeps these people in conditions that represent or certainly look like modern-day slavery to me. So the government has made a change with respect to that, and yay, government, good for you. where now they have issued or started to issue what are called open work permits. And so in other words, if you're a seasonal agricultural worker and you come up here and the person that recruited you and got you up here in the first place is a real piece of work, you don't have to sit there and take that. If you're being abused, you can take advantage of some government agencies that are out there to report the abuse and bring the abuse to a halt. Or you can just get up and leave and go work for somebody else, like anybody else in Canada can. Now, you know, the everybody else in Canada that I'm referring to, they're Canadians and they have what are called mobility rights, which means they can go anywhere in the country they want. So if they want to find a better job somewhere else in a different province, different part of the country, there's nothing keeping them where they currently live. They can pick up and they can move to wherever that employment is. And they have the right to do that, but seasonal workers don't, right? And so that's one of the built-in abuses of the system that they have to endure. Is these closed work permits mean that they are stuck in place, and so if they're up here working for an unsavory character or somebody who doesn't mind exploiting other human beings to get what he or she is after, then they're stuck there. And this open work permit will allow them to leave, and to complain, and to leave and to go find a better situation elsewhere. Now, with any system, with any process, with any policy, there's always going to be some weak spot. There's always going to be some wiggle room, gray area, whatever you want to call it, where the true spirit of whatever the policy is doesn't get fulfilled because somebody found a gap, either a procedural, a process gap, or a rationale gap, or just an oversight gap. But somebody's found a way that they could utilize and exploit that gap that I'm referring to for their own purposes. That works for employers as it does for employees. So some critics of this can say, well, that's no good because, you know, I'm a farmer and I brought all these people up here and I treated my people halfway respectfully and stuff. And yet they up and left. And then where am I, right? For all the work and possible expense that I went to bring these people up here. And now they're just up and leaving. And that's no good. And so I can certainly understand and commiserate with a person in that situation. And yeah, are these seasonal workers, are they just paragons of virtue that are coming up here and they don't have any, you know, flaws in their personality? I mean, they're people just like the rest of us, for better or for worse, and everything in between. And so can an open work permit be abused by the seasonal workers? I suppose. But I would rather have that potential for abuse. I would rather have that existing than the other, which is where these people are being institutionally abused and there's nothing that they can do about it. I would rather have the former than the latter, 10 times out of 10. You know, there's no policy in the world that's going to pass the scrutiny of perfection. But I mean, at least we're moving in the right direction with the open work permit. If there are abuses that come as a result of them, let's identify them, find out what they are, and then let's fix them as best we can. But even though a policy change may have inherent flaws in it, it doesn't mean that overall the philosophy behind it is flawed. We are all people. And depending on your faith and depending on the God that you believe in or how you worship, but you know, every religion that I've ever studied, all seems to come back to the same core principle. We are required to treat one another as we would be treated ourselves. I am happy that the government has listened to some of the criticisms that are coming from human rights groups and that sort of thing. Where they've identified an area where people are being exploited, people are being used, and people are being suppressed. And this is Canada, and we just don't do that here. Anyways, I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I don't think it's a problem that's necessarily happening in our area. It seems to be mostly a southwestern Ontario thing, from my understanding. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your understanding, and we'll see you soon.